Hi team, my name is Mr. Powell. Welcome back to the Introduction to European History Anchor Fact series of printables and mini lessons. How do you take a story like European history and cram it into 10 mini lessons? The answer is very carefully. European history is one of the most complicated stories there is. There are almost as many European countries as there are American states. Imagine if we tried to tell American history by doing it state by state. That would be nonsense. And the same thing goes for Europe. The big picture is what matters. And we have to focus on the people and places and events that changed the world from what it was into what it is. Now that we've covered the Dark Ages, we have to look at the event that more than any other marks the rise of the Europe of nations. What I mean is that during the Dark Ages, things were very unsettled. The story is all about tribes and wars. Tribes, like the Franks, and wars between them and the Romans, or the Muslims, or the Lombards, over and over. When did this cycle end? There's no single place we can draw a line in history and say, the Dark Ages were over. But if you forced me to do it, I would pick 1453. Which is the end of the 100 Years' War. Why would I choose this date? The answer is that from that point onward, there would be two nations in Europe that didn't exist before, England and France. But didn't they already exist? The answer is yes and no. There were countries called England and France, but there weren't nations called England and France. England and France were like twins whose bodies are connected. The connection had been made when a French lord named William of Normandy conquered England in 1066. By doing so, he became one of the most famous people in English history, known as William the Conqueror. The problem for both England and France was that a French duke, the duke is the ruler of a territory called a duchy, was now also the ruler of another country, England. From that point onwards, the English kings managed to swallow up more and more land in France, until they owned more of it than the French king himself. This situation could not last. But to make matters worse, the French king, Charles IV, died, and the next person in line to take over France was the King of England, Edward III. That would mean no more France. France and England would become one united kingdom. That was unacceptable, to the French anyway, so the French royal family made up some excuses about why it would not be allowed and named another person as king. This is what led to the 100 Years' War, which actually lasted 116 years, from 1337 to 1453. Obviously, such a long war has many twists and turns. We can't get caught up in the details. What matters is that nothing was settled until a young girl came on the scene named Joan of Arc. Joan claimed she was on a mission from God to save the French king and to save France from England. She inspired the king and his soldiers to victory numerous times, and France was ultimately able to expel the English and gain its independence. There is no more popular hero in all of French culture than Joan of Arc. There are statues dedicated to her all over France. Sadly, Joan was betrayed after she gave France the victory. She was captured by rebellious allies of the English, and when she refused to confess that she was basically a witch, she was burned at the stake. Yes, in that way, it was still the Dark Ages. Witches were also killed in America later than that. It took us a long time to claw our way up to modern freedom and rights. But by 1453, when the 100 Years' War ended, France existed, England existed, Spain and Portugal existed. Nations were forming in Europe. They were becoming stable. Their governments were getting truly organized. Life was starting to become regular and organized. The Dark Ages were slowly ending. Did that mean Europe was going to become a peaceful place? Definitely not. In the next lesson, we'll look at a set of wars that lasted even longer: the Reformation and religious wars. See you next time.